Yeah, what's up, people? It's your boy Gigs and that. Picking up the Hype Man Strikes Back YouTube channel for all your boxing related news. It's one of them ones, innit?
There was one point I forgot to make regarding boxing versus UFC, and that is the fact that not only does boxing have over 20 times the number of fighters that MMA has, and even more so than UFC, boxing also has 17 or 18, if you count Bridgerweight, weight divisions, whereas UFC only has 8. And what does this mean? Well, if you've got way more fighters, as boxing has, than MMA, then there are obviously going to be way more matchups that you want to see. And if, again, you include the fact that there are 17 or 18 weight divisions, then there's going to be at least 17 or 18 champions. But of course, we know there's 4 champions per division. So just think, do the maths. Think of how many fights there is that you actually want to see in boxing. There's way more than there is in UFC. And so in boxing, we might not get to see as high a percentage of the fights that we want as you get in UFC, but the overall number of fights is higher in terms of fights we want to see. But a lot of people like to focus on the negative. A lot of people have a glass is half empty mentality rather than a glass is half full mentality. So when I'm looking at boxing, yeah, sure, there's room for improvement. There's things that we can try and do to get more of the fights that we want. But look at the fights we have had. You can't sit there and tell me with a straight face that we don't get any good fights in boxing. We get loads of good fights. We get good fights on a regular basis. We get upsets. We get unifications. There are a number of undisputed champions now. So it all depends on how you want to look at it. I think some people, maybe who haven't been watching boxing for as long, are comparing the formats of the two and not taking various things into account. As I say, like the size of boxing compared to UFC is chalk and cheese. Boxing has over 20 times the number of fighters. Lots of promoters, lots of broadcasters, different sanctioned bodies, and what have you. This is because of the size of the sport, or at least partly because of the size of the sport. If MMA gets to the size of boxing, it's almost certainly going to have the same type of problems. But right now, MMA is way, way, way smaller in terms of the number of participants. And another point I kind of want to expand on from the previous video is that, yeah, there have been some big pay-per-view successes for UFC, but there have also been even bigger pay-per-view successes for boxing. So the highest number of pay-per-views for a UFC event, I believe, was Khabib versus McGregor. That's not the norm for UFC. That's an outlier. Just as Mayweather-Pacquiao was an outlier, that's the highest number of pay-per-view sales for a boxing match, and that was something like 4.5 million, which is nearly double what Conor McGregor versus Khabib did. And as I mentioned in the previous video, there's nobody out there right now doing that kind of numbers in UFC since Conor McGregor and Khabib retired. Just as in the same way, there's nobody doing Mayweather numbers in boxing right now. So there are going to be peaks and troughs for both sports. All right. Anyway, just a little quick addendum to the previous video. I'll leave it there.